Hey guys, so today we're going to talk a little bit about extending Cloud Foundry.net. And I know a lot of you are from the Valley and you're kind of looking at what kind of languages are really out there, but I want to kind of give you an idea of what we're seeing just from the Iron Foundry standpoint and what we're doing around the passion of actually extending Cloud Foundry.net, as a lot of companies are now embracing what Cloud Foundry does today. And it's big for us. We're seeing this not only from our public cloud standpoint at Tier 3, but we're also seeing it as private clouds. Every single one of them are looking at how to enable .NET in that Cloud Foundry ecosystem. So a little bit about .NET, and these aren't all completely accurate, but they're as good as we can get. So .NET, over 6 million developers worldwide use .NET. Most of them in the enterprise. It's over 85% of them are in the enterprise, and they're all building custom applications or integration with other parts of the ecosystem. .NET or C#, to be very specific about that, is one of the top 10 repos on GitHub still to this day. It has a very vibrant community. Most ports that you see today on GitHub or what is going on around the .NET community around integrating with other systems is still from these .NET developers who are doing pretty amazing mission-critical applications. And it's all enterprise developers. We've talked about this a couple times, but enterprise developers in that space are really dominating in .NET. Very rarely do you see people kind of just lighting up and doing small startups with it, but we're starting to see in the enterprise it's really owned with .NET and Java. But one thing that we've seen recently is .NET devs are really evolving. And when you think about that, what we've seen is for the last 10 years or the last decade that we're seeing this huge ecosystem really evolve. First, it started out with SQL Server, SharePoint, Windows Server 2012, BizTalk, Visual Studio. It was a complete ecosystem that's being completely ran by Microsoft, and they did an amazing job for that. I've been at Microsoft. A lot of the people who are around the .NET ecosystem have really seen this evolve into a really seamless thing for them. They can light up applications, get them up and running very quickly, and the .NET CLR and even C# is a really well-known language, and it really gives them that. But what we've seen is this major transition in the last couple years. Not only are enterprises now adopting newer technology, they're adopting at a hyper-scale rate. Like literally, we have more people looking at Iron Foundry than we've, in the last couple years, than we ever thought we could. And most of them, when we talk to them, even at ironfoundry.org, when they go to the trial environment, we have thousands of developers now on that system trying out stuff. And when we ask them, we'll say, why are you trying Iron Foundry? What really matters to you? And every single one of them is, I'm trying to prototype something. I'm at a large bank. I'm at a big enterprise. And I'm prototyping it to show .NET, the language, running with integration points underneath. And these are the big things that they're doing. They're learning how to get scale. They're trying to get it bigger. They're trying to make it more robust. And so we're seeing this huge ecosystem play out where Cloud Foundry is becoming this new integration point for all these services. And also, we're seeing a lot of polyglot happen. When you look at Node and even Python, we're seeing .NET developers actually adopt other languages to make sure that they can be better developers and actually do a language for the right use case. Recently, I was actually in a Node meetup, and they asked how many developers were actually .NET guys for their main job. Almost every single person raised their hand. So this really comes to Iron Foundry and why we created this. This was a huge need for the community, and it was a huge need for us at Tier 3. Tier 3 is really unique, and I'll just kind of give you a little bit of background around that. When I started the company in 2006, we really focused on enabling a cloud, but we did it on .NET, which is pretty much unheard of. No other cloud other than Azure would ever put their name on .NET, but we were really passionate about it. We loved what .NET was doing. We were already in Seattle area, which is well known for .NET expertise. And so we started building that out. But one thing we wanted to do on our cloud is figure out how can we make a platform as a service for our management layer. And we started looking at other technologies. You know, we started building our own, of course, which is a nightmare. And we started looking at Cloud Foundry. I remember very vividly being at VMware, talking to James and Jerry about this cool new thing that they're coming out with called Cloud Foundry and how it's going to revolutionize the world. And that they are looking for someone who actually knew Windows. It was kind of like this weird hunt excursion that they were on, being like, do you know Windows? Have you ever done Windows before? So we talked to them and we were like, yeah, we've already built some of this platform as a service type technology. We looked at Cloud Foundry and realized that a lot of our technology can actually be based off of that. And so even at Tier 3 today, we use a lot of the Iron Foundry stuff in a day-to-day mission-critical application to make sure that it's available. And we loved it so much that we open sourced it for everybody. Iron Foundry is built to give to the community. It is full open source, enabled for anybody. Anybody contribute, anybody. That's what we're all about. This is for the community. And so we gave it, the engineers at Tier 3 work on it. We have other people from the community now working on it also. We launched it in December 2011. It's had over 11,000 downloads. That's the DA integration, all Cloud Foundry v1. We also added Visual Studio and Windows Client integration. Cloud Foundry Explorer was the other one. And Cloud Foundry Core integration. That's all the DEA and things like that. But of course, things change. And Cloud Foundry v1 was our big launch in December, and we've been doing edits from then. And then Cloud Foundry v2 came along. Just to kind of give you a little bit of overview of what we've had to do to extend .NET. In Cloud Foundry v1, it's a little bit small, but we'll kind of, I'll give you a little bit of it. We had to build not only the clients to basically enable it. Most Windows developers, you ask about Ruby and they think that you're saying rugby, so it doesn't work very well. On v1, when we started talking about it, they're like, look, I need a client. I need a Windows client that's easy to install, preferably in .NET, and I need it to come up and running. And so we had to build clients for this. We started with 2 of them, being able to make that happen. We added code to the cloud controller. The DEA, we actually went in and backwards engineered the entire DEA and basically the NATS messaging bus to be able to make that happen. So we built a Windows service that was our DEA agent. And we also did edits to the VMC because at the time, it was pretty much all hard-coded. When you're looking at the system, it's very modular, but a lot of the ways that the languages are built out, it was built, v1 code. It was hundreds of files. Hundreds, and many people looked at it and was like, look, this is a fork on a fork. It's huge. And so we really spent a lot of time on this. What's amazing is V2. And I just have to say, does anybody know what the -- stack is? Has anybody played with this? Okay, let's just say it is fucking amazing. It is absolutely amazing. We spent thousands of lines of code, hundreds of files doing v1, and with -- stack, it really redefined how we do .NET in Cloud Foundry. And this is props to Pivotal for what they've done in the Cloud Foundry ecosystem, because this is what modular paths is all about. I can actually add windows in a fairly easy way and enable an entire ecosystem. So in our scenario, we can actually do -- stack MSWin CLR. And what it does is actually routes from the client through the controller and specifies a certain type of stack. So a DEA running Windows that can actually run MSWin CLR. This gives us complete capabilities with being able to not have to do the VMC or CLI components. We don't have to integrate with going in and changing the cloud controller in any way. We can actually focus on the DEA layer, doing it what it's good at, and also being able to add some other components around that. On top of it, we had to add this thing called a build pack, which most .NET developers have never heard of, except for when they heard about Heroku or what they're doing. We added a .NET build pack. So this does a couple things that's really interesting. It actually adds the self-host executable of IIS. So many of you don't know how IIS works, but IIS is the information server that runs .NET on all Windows boxes. It's really robust, ran in the enterprise, very well supported by Microsoft. But they did something about 3 years ago. They actually made it so it's a lot more scalable in a couple ways. One is they added a lot more app pools and feature sets, but the real big thing is they added this thing called a self-hosted executable. So before, we would have to talk to IIS and do a whole bunch of things to make it work. You'd have to kind of configure it on the fly. But now what you can do is we can actually take the IIS host self-executable and put it right into the build pack. So on delivery, when the DA actually spins up your guys' code, it adds the self-executable IIS host process, and then it pushes that as a delivery execution. So we can actually spin up IIS straight through that on every single application, really setting the same guidelines that Cloud Foundry really does on being able to warden or be able to keep a process isolated in a certain way. The second thing is NuGet. So NuGet is the gem of .NET. And what we've been able to do is really make it so NuGet can fully integrate. So if you drop a NuGet package, which Microsoft developers do, it'll actually go out, grab all your data, all your libraries that you need to run your application, and push it right inside your package. So you don't even have to push the NuGet packages with it. That was the easy part. Then we got in the DEA and Warden. So DEA and Warden, when we did V1, was very interesting. It was a lot easier, actually, in the end, because we started building it and we just went all out and went all C# all the way through, built our own Windows services. One of our goals with CFV2 and Iron Foundry is to really enable full integration into Cloud Foundry and be able to check that back into the main. I know James mentioned that right before, but our goal at Iron Foundry is to really make the DAA completely compatible on Windows and Linux without any issues, so that you guys don't have to go and fork another DA and figure out how to make that happen. So this was a big thing for us, trying to figure out how to do it. And Windows doesn't really like it. So we went in and did a lot of work on this. And actually, if you guys check out some of the repos, we've already started pushing a lot of the code right back into the main of Cloud Foundry with pivotal support. So we've converted all the Bash calls to PowerShell. PowerShell is, of course, the Bash of Windows, because Microsoft has to build their own thing for everything. We did apply changes. So we applied changes in the Steno and VCAP common, really just bug fixes, making it more Windows compatible, understanding the event handling and messaging, being able to handle that a little bit better on Windows so it's a more scalable type system. On the DEA, we added a couple things. One is a factory switch, so it understands when it's on Windows and what it's supposed to do, so that it can actually PowerShell out into the Warden and be able to handle that type of system and send the right commands to the Warden. On top of that, we went in and did the Warden Container. And this is where all the magic is now happening on Windows. And even in Cloud Foundry, if you kind of think about how you light up applications and get them on, up and running, this is the #1 thing that everybody asks me about. And so I want to just spend a couple minutes on explaining what really this is all about. The Warden.NET container in Linux is amazing. I mean, it isolates, it does everything you want. There's no such thing as that in Windows. So Windows has a different way of doing it. It's really using user access policies, being able to specify down to the file system what access they have, and making that really easy for users. So we took the approach that most Windows developers had and basically locked the server down so the process can run really easily. So when an application lights up, it's really easy. We go in and we create a no rights user on the server. So that user is created for every single process application. It's up and running, and it's fully integrated into the system. What's really interesting for .NET devs, if there's any .NET devs in the room, or listening online, this is the cool part about this. You can actually spin up, and if you launch this as a private cloud in the Windows environment, you can spin it up, and you can actually add a flag in your build pack to run as a Windows domain user. This is a huge issue for .NET developers. They need to run under certain usernames and be able to have that, so it uses basically authentication across their domain. So you can actually use the flag and enable it through there. If it doesn't, spins up a local user, gets it up and running, and it has no rights on the server initially. Next thing is it creates a directory. Simple directory, adds the user, puts read-write access. The next thing it does is it spins up the application and executes it across the entire system, and it runs that IIS host up as that user. So instead of going through IIS and making that possible, the entire management schema, we can spin up hundreds and thousands of these processes on the box running and be able to manage that the same way that the DEA thinks it's managing a Cloud Foundry Linux instance. And this is totally changing the dynamics of how Windows is even being hosted. Before, we would actually go and only talk to IIS, and when you think about that, it changes the perception or even the architecture of what DEA is expecting to happen. When it's doing health checks or spinning up new processes, before IIS was doing a lot of that, now the DEA has more control over the process and can handle that a lot better. The next thing we have, and this is actually now up on the repo at Iron Foundry in GitHub, we built in standalone apps. So this is beta right now. We're still working on it. But this allows you to do a couple things. One is you can specify in your build pack that you can launch and do scheduled jobs through quartz.net, which is really nice. It's kind of like cron for Windows. And you can get it up and running, be able to execute, get online, no problem. And it's full standalone application. So it's a console application that Windows is allowing you to execute on. This is something that we hear a lot of .NET developers really ask about, is how do I launch services and get them up and running? You can now do this through standalone apps. So we're working to be very on parity with what Cloud Foundry is doing on feature-wise and make that really easy for us. So Cloud Foundry and Iron Foundry is, there's a lot of work to do. And when you think about Iron Foundry, like I said at the start, we're all about open source. That means people can contribute, get online. We're checking into the main of Cloud Foundry and making that possible. We're adding other clients to make that easy for everybody to use Cloud Foundry. And that's really our goal in life, extend Cloud Foundry and enable .NET in the ecosystem. And these are all the things that we work on. We've done a lot of work across that. We have actually partners that are now checking in code across the Iron Foundry. And we have tons of companies using this. Intel was one of them that we talked about. I have banks that actually randomly call me up and say they have thousands of applications running on Iron Foundry, and they're wanting to contribute or even be part of that community. So here are the big things that we're working on. .NET SDK library, Cloud Foundry core integration. This is what we talked to on V2. The Visual Studio extension, making it easy for .NET developers to develop .NET and get it pushed to Cloud Foundry. PowerShell for Cloud Foundry is going to be another big one. Many of the Windows developers, they do not want to use the current CLI, especially in Ruby. Now the new one's out in Go. But PowerShell is really well known in the Windows community, and so we want to be able to make sure that that's possible. And the last one, SQL Server integration. I know there's a lot of other server products that Microsoft does, but realistically, what we hear, the number one thing is SQL Server integration. We want SQL Server integration, and that's about it. So we're working on that now. We have it in Cloud Foundry V1, V2 is coming out, and over the next 6 months, these are the things that we're running out through Iron Foundry. This is enabling the entire ecosystem with what we need to enable .NET. Okay, so you can contribute, and we love people to contribute, get online. As everybody who comes up here, every company, they always say, hey, we're hiring. So I'm going to say, hey, we're hiring for Iron Foundry, and your job is your job interview. Just go online and contribute some code for a free job, because nobody makes money at it. So everybody should contribute. And this is really about us as a community enabling Iron Foundry and .NET. And that's a big thing for us. So if you're going online and you're having things that you want to do, contribute. We're happy to take any pull requests. Thanks.